Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, let's start with the latest from the Republican National Convention. The second night of the event in Milwaukee saw a full-throated show of support for former President Donald Trump from his former primary rivals, including Nikki Haley.
Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period.
The former South Carolina governor was not originally scheduled to speak at this convention, but after the attempt on Trump's life last weekend, Haley says she agreed to appear in the name of unity. The delegates also heard from another 2024 primary candidate, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
We need a commander-in-chief who can lead 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. America cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency.
Governor DeSantis and other convention speakers focused on the theme of the evening, Make America Safe Again. They accused President Biden of letting the country be overrun by undocumented migrants and fentanyl.
Well, Nathan, Bloomberg News has learned security around Trump was boosted by the Secret Service after they picked up intelligence of an Iranian plot to assassinate him. Officials say there is no indication that there's any link to Thomas Matthew Crooks, who's accused of shooting at Trump at a rally on Saturday. We get more from Bloomberg's senior editor, Bill Ferries.
We've seen a threat against a number of former Trump administration officials, a lot of that tied to the administration's killing of the top Iranian general Qasem Soleimani in early 2020. We know that officials like former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, those men all have added security, which is unusual for a former official because of those threats. But this is the first time we've learned about a direct threat against Donald Trump himself.
Bloomberg's Bill Ferries. Iran said in a social media post that the reports of its involvement in a plot against Trump are baseless.
Well, Karen, prior to last weekend's assassination attempt and shortly before his debate with President Biden, Donald Trump spoke to Bloomberg Businessweek about his economic plans for a second term. Nancy Cook was one of the Bloomberg journalists who conducted the 90-minute interview. She says they asked Trump if he wants to remove Fed Chair Jay Powell from his position.
He said, there's a lot of false information out there. These were his words. And then we asked him if he would allow Jay Powell to serve out the term that Biden appointed him to, which is through 2028. And he said he would allow him to serve. He did add the caveat, as long as I thought he was doing things right. He said he did not think that they should cut interest rates before the election, sort of again implying that if they did, that would be like a political move to sort of help Biden. And also he sort of resisted several questions that we asked him about sort of nudging the Fed or what he would do.
Bloomberg's Nancy Cook says Trump also told her he wants to bring the corporate tax rate to as low as 15% and that he'd even consider Jamie Dimon to be the next Treasury Secretary. Hear more from Nancy on her sit-down with Donald Trump on the latest edition of the Big Take podcast with David Gura. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Well, Nathan, while the Republican convention continues, President Biden is back out on the campaign trail. He reached out to black voters at the NAACP's convention in Las Vegas.
Just think about where the black community was when I came into office. Think about how far the black community has come. We still got a long way to go.
And the president said the political temperature needs to come down after the shooting at former President Trump's rally. But he also says Americans should not ignore violence against black Americans and easy access to guns on the streets.
Well, meantime, Karen, the Biden administration's considering a tougher chip crackdown against China. The U.S. has told allies it's considering the most severe trade restrictions against companies like Tokyo Electron and ASML if they continue giving China access to advanced semiconductor technology. We get more from Bloomberg's Oliver Krug.
This would be basically using a new instrument, which is the Foreign Direct Product Rule, which is basically imposing that any foreign-made products that use even a little bit of American technology within it would be legally banned from doing so, right? And this is aimed really at the service and repair of many of the chip-building equipment that is already in China rather than new stuff coming in, which U.S. firms are already banned from doing, and there are already some restrictions there, but this would be a sort of patent sort of ban on them.
Bloomberg's Ollie Crook. Shares of ASML are down 6.5%. Tokyo Electron is down 7.5%.
Turning to the markets now, Nathan. Stocks entering the day at record highs, and they're not led by big tech. Wall Street extended a pattern of money rotating into small caps and out of mega cap safety since last week's soft inflation data. Over the past 4 sessions, the Russell 2000 has beaten the NASDAQ 100 by almost 12 percentage points, which has not happened since 2011.
And Karen, shares of Bank of America closed at a 2-year high following better than expected earnings. The bank's CEO, Brian Moynihan, tells Bloomberg's David Weston B of A is adding customers in small and mid-market business loans.
If you look across the loan categories, credit card growth was decent. Home equity growth is kind of bouncing along because consumers aren't using their home equity loans yet. They may. Mortgage lending activity were relatively flat there. You go on the commercial side, the great news is we grew small business and business banking, which is our $50 million segment. It grew for small business for the 20th consecutive quarter. We're the number one small business lender, despite what you hear. We are the largest small business lender in America, and that grew, which means there's activity.
Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan says the company also notched its best second quarter ever for stock trading. You can hear his full conversation with David Weston on the Bloomberg Talks podcast. That's available anywhere you get your podcasts.
We have a bullish forecast on Tesla, Nathan, from a top investor. ARK Investments' Kathy Wood says the EV maker will surge tenfold because of its move into the more profitable autonomous taxi platform business. Wood has been bullish on Tesla for a long time, making it a top holding in her ARK Innovation ETF. The fund has lost nearly 9% this year.
And Karen, we've got a change of the guard at HSBC. The bank has named George El-Hedry its next chief executive officer. This continues the lender's tradition of picking insiders to run the bank. The 50-year-old is currently HSBC's chief financial officer. El-Hedry takes over as CEO in September, replacing Noel Quinn. In April, he announced a surprise decision to retire from HSBC after a more than 3-decade career.
And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez says he plans to appeal Tuesday's conviction for taking bribes from Egypt. The jury found the former Senate Foreign Relations chair guilty on all 16 counts, accepting gold bars, lavish gifts, and other items in exchange for official favors. The calls rang out for Menendez to resign, including from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, junior New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, and New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. Menendez spoke after the verdict.
I have never, ever been a foreign agent, and the decision rendered by the jury today would put at risk every member of the United States Senate in terms of what they think a foreign agent would be.
Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said Menendez's years of selling his office to the highest bidder have finally come to an end. Christine Curtis, acting assistant director of the FBI New York office.
Public corruption investigations are vital to our democracy because they hold our leaders accountable and ensure they serve the public's interest, not their own.
Menendez is due to be sentenced October 29th. Newark City Council President LaMonica McIver is the victor in Tuesday's special House Democratic primary to succeed the late Donald Payne in Congress. McIver, at 47%, beat her closest challenger by more than 30 points. Payne died in April after serving in the House for over 2 decades. A special general election will take place September 18th to fill the remainder of Payne's term ending January 25th in the heavily Democratic 10th District. Republican Carmen Bucco was uncontested in the GOP primary and is the nominee in the regular election as well. A big boom made more than a few people in the New York City area look up and take notice yesterday afternoon. NASA now confirming a small meteor flew over the New York City area. This New Yorker was with his cat and dog.
There was the initial boom, and then like less than a second after that, there was a tremble of the house. I have a dog, a golden retriever, and a cat, both of which the golden retriever jumped out of his skin and the cat just darted under the sofa.
NASA says the meteor originated above New York City and passed over the Statue of Liberty before disintegrating above New Jersey. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. And it's time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The Stars were out in Texas, and there's no bigger star right now than Shohei Ohtani. In the third inning, he had a 3-run homer off the Red Sox Taylor House. The National League took a 3-0 All-Star Game lead, but didn't score again. AL tied the game bottom of the third. The Yankees won. Soto, 2-run double. He later scored. It was 3-3 in the fifth.
And this is the guy that will take the extra base if he puts it in play. And this one may be out of play. He smacks one to right, and it is way out of here. Jaron Duran, about 25 rows up, right center field, a 2-run home run. And now the American League is on top.
ESPN Radio had it. Duran's homer coming off the Giants' Logan Webb. AL won 5-3, a game that saw 20 pitchers used, although not the Yankees' Clay Holmes. Aaron Judge, a couple of ground outs. Pete Alonso, the Mets, came up once and struck out. Caleb Williams, drafted first overall this past April by the Chicago Bears, has his contract, 4 years, $39 million, fully guaranteed. Expected to be the Bears' Week 1 starting QB. Only 4 first-round picks have not yet signed. 49ers wideout Brandon Ayuk has seen talk stall regarding a new contract. He's asked for a trade. The Niners say they have no intention. The well-traveled 36-year-old Patrick Beverley, who's played for 7 NBA teams just in the last 6 years, has a new team, Tel Aviv of the Israeli League, NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. Alex Sarr, who last month was the second pick of the draft to Washington, had a night to forget. The 19-year-old Frenchman shot 0 for 15. Kobe Bryant's father has passed away. Joe Bryant played in the NBA many years in Italy and recently suffered a stroke. Joe Jellybean Bryant was 69. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen, Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager. A message of unity is coming through at the Republican National Convention. One-time rivals of former President Donald Trump, including Nikki Haley, are getting behind their nominee.
I'm here tonight because we have a country to save. And a unified Republican Party is essential for saving her.
For more this morning, we are joined by Bloomberg News senior editor Bill Ferries. Bill, good morning. We've heard a lot of talk about unifying after the attempt on former President Trump's life, but we just heard from Nikki Haley, unifying the Republican Party. Sounds a lot like the message we're getting out of Milwaukee.
Yeah, Nathan, absolutely. There was a parade of former rivals to President Trump taking the stage there at the Republican convention. But Nikki Haley was probably one of the biggest there. You know, she led the longest primary fight against the former president this year. And there were even doubts when she withdrew whether she would really be behind Trump or not heading into this election. But she was there saying that, you know, Donald Trump is the best choice for the next president. You also had former rivals like Ron DeSantis taking the stage, and DeSantis and Trump had a very bitter fight in the primaries, and for a long time DeSantis had the money war chest that dwarfed what President Trump had, but he was there as well. You had Laura Trump take the stage just to enforce the idea that this is really Trump's party. It's his daughter-in-law, and she is a co-chair of the RNC. So it was an impressive display of unity at a time when the Democrats, of course, are still facing a lot of disunity over whether Joe Biden should be the candidate for them going forward into November.
So we're seeing the display of unity from the speakers. Are we hearing a unified message in terms of the themes, the issues that the Republicans are going to put forward as this campaign goes on?
Well, the platform this year is noticeably thin compared to years past. This is really, I think people are putting aside their public differences and getting on board. And it's clear from the attendance at the RNC that, there are a lot of people who aren't there this year. There are, former presidents and vice presidents, and you talk about people like George Bush or Dan Quayle. I mean, these kind of people would be standard, they would be standard participants in a Republican convention in any other year. They are not there. You had Mitch McConnell getting on stage and receiving a lot of boos at the RNC. So I think what we've seen so far this week shows that former President Trump has a very, very tight grip on the messaging of the RNC and the actual control of it.
Well, we're certainly getting a lot of ideas about what a second Trump term might mean in terms of policy in this wide-ranging interview that's going to be on the cover of Bloomberg Business Week. Talk us through a little bit of that in terms of what we could get from the former president in terms of tax policy, in terms of foreign policy.
Yeah, President Trump spoke with our reporters at length at Mar-a-Lago. This was in late June, just before the primary debate with Joe Biden. He talked a lot about the economy. He talked a lot about foreign policy. In terms of the specifics, he talked about tax policy. He said he'd like to see his signature 2017 tax cuts, which are due to expire, I think, at the end of next year, extended. He'd maybe even like to see an additional reduction in the corporate tax rate, which his law lowered from 35% to 21%. He talked about seeing it at 20% or lower. He made some very interesting comments about the Federal Reserve. The markets have been pricing in 2 rate cuts possibly later this year. President Trump came in and said he doesn't think the Fed should make any cuts before the election, signaling that he thinks that would only serve to help Joe Biden. But on another point with the Fed that people are watching, he said that he would likely keep Jay Powell in his position as chairman for the rest of his term. There were a lot of questions about whether he would try to pressure Powell out if he got elected in November. So that was another interesting development. If you look at the foreign policy side, he reiterated his interest in maintaining or raising tariffs on a whole range of imported goods. He signaled that he's not really inclined to support Taiwan or doesn't feel obligated to support Taiwan if there's a conflict with China. So across the board, I think a lot of interesting signals on economic policy and for American allies and rivals abroad.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.